One thing that the 2023 NFL Draft signified was the closing of the loop to a large degree for the Seattle Seahawks and the Russell Wilson trade. And I think it's safe to say that that trade worked out pretty well for Seattle. Especially if Russ doesn't bounce back in 2023, it's going to look even better. Because it put them in a good spot in last year's NFL Draft, and then put them in a really good spot in this year's draft. And you basically look at it and you say, for a team that got a career year out of Geno Smith and made the playoffs, they got basically a bonus top 5 pick out of all that. That's crazy to me. So I was wondering, how's this Seahawks team going to approach this draft? Are they just going to go strictly best player available, try to fill some needs? Are they going to play the long-term game, maybe be interested in drafting a quarterback early? If there's a thought that they like a quarterback in this draft, maybe they take him, sit him behind Geno for a year. Wasn't sure what they were going to do. They were a bit of a wild card to pick 5. You had some people talking about they would take an edge rusher. Some people thinking they would take Jalen Carter. And instead the Seahawks did something else at pick 5. That was a big surprise. It was the first real wow surprise of the draft. And that was taking Devon Witherspoon, the corner out of Illinois. Now, Witherspoon was one of my favorite players in this year's draft. And I could absolutely see why Pete Carroll, general manager John Schneider, fell in love with this guy. Plays with a nastiness, a physicality, ball skills. He's tough, aggressive. Love all of that stuff about his game. But I'm really surprised, really surprised that a team with their history of drafting day 3 corners and developing them, the Shermans of the world, the Griffins of the world, why they would spend a top 5 pick on a corner. That was fascinating to me. And you could also say, well, they passed on Jalen Carter. I personally can't blame them, but I was slightly surprised that they went with Witherspoon here. Most people, I think, were slotting in Witherspoon to go 6 to the Lions, and he didn't even get there. That's what's crazy about this. I do find myself wondering, though, if Anthony Richardson had somehow been available at pick 5, would the Seahawks have taken him? One of those wonderful, hypothetical what-if scenarios for the NFL Draft that maybe someday we could get an answer to. I'd be really interested to see whether or not they would have pulled the trigger on Anthony Richardson if he was there. He wasn't, so it's a moot point, but just thinking about it. And then with their second first-round pick at pick 20, I don't think it surprised me here. The Seahawks have a history of liking to trade back and getting additional draft picks. They didn't do that here in round 1. I was a little surprised, especially with that 20th pick. But they took Jaxon, Smith-Njigba. I know there was certainly, being a Bears fan and seeing Bears Twitter, they were pumping him up, talking about whether the Bears should take him at 9 or not. And to me, this was more appropriate to the draft range of where he should have went. He's a huge upgrade in the slot for the Seahawks. He doesn't have to come in to be the guy. You put him with Metcalf, you put him with Lockett, you give Geno Smith another weapon. At that point in the draft, that absolutely makes sense to me. So, in terms of the Seahawks in the day 1, you had 2 first-round picks, which just because you have 2 first-round picks doesn't automatically make it an A. I look at Devon Witherspoon and I said, was he really worth a top 5 pick for this Seahawks team? I don't know. Maybe they were in a spot where they're like, oh, we don't know if the board perfectly lines up, but we really like Witherspoon, and he does address a need on the defense for us, and that's going to be the decision point, and that's why we're going to take him. Njigba, like I said, that was a solid pick at that spot. It's around the appropriate range. I thought he should have won in this draft. He was not a top 10 or 15 talent to me. I thought he was more of a borderline top of the second round guy. So this is about the high end of where he should have been drafted. So it was an okay performance from the Seahawks. No additional future draft pick capital was acquired. No trade downs in day 1 to get additional capital in this year's draft. So I give him a grade of C+ for day 1. They had 2 picks in day 2, and Derick Hall, round 2 pick, he was a powerful edge rusher that fits their system. That makes sense. They needed another edge rusher. You can always use more edge rushers in the NFL. So, yeah, go get a guy like Hall that fits their system. I think he fits it really well. The one that really makes me scratch my damn head, though, is the Zach Charbonnet pick at pick 52. And no, I'm not just saying that because I would have loved for him to have been there for the Bears at 53 so they could have taken him, although that would have been really nice. Don't get me wrong at all. I just really question this pick. This is not the goddamn 1980s or even 1990s anymore. You just took Kenneth Walker III last year in the second round. He was a damn Offensive Rookie of the Year candidate. I understand you're in a place where you feel like you could swing for the fences and you can, take some luxury picks here, but this doesn't feel like the right luxury pick. How much do you think Charbonnet is actually going to play? Or if he plays a lot, does that mean that Walker doesn't? Like the whole split backfield thing, you say, well, they get plenty of carries. It's only because one of those guys gets hurt, and then that's not great any goddamn ways. How are you going to, in your offense, and with what you do offensively, be able to justify that pick of Charbonnet at 52 and the pick you spent in the second round of Kenneth Walker III last year? I just don't get it. I gave him a C- grade for day 2. I understood the Derick Hall pick. The Charbonnet one was like one of those head-scratching, what the fuck are they thinking here? Stay true to your board, but be logical about it. Did you really need to draft a backup running back in round 2? And if Kenneth Walker was going into the 4th year of his contract and end of his rookie deal, I get it then. Like, it's about leverage and it's about flexibility financially for the team in the future. There's none of that here. This just felt dumb. And I thought day 3 brought a necessary emphasis on the trenches. I thought their day 3 was much better than their day 2. Certainly helps that they have more volume there. But I think Anthony Bradford on the interior of the offensive line, he has starting level talent. I think Cameron Young could be their long-term kind of nose tackle. I look at Mike Morris, Oluwatimi, and those two guys from Michigan. I thought they were decent value picks in round 5. Oluwatimi, I think Olu could start at some point down the road. When talking about a team that took Devon Witherspoon in the top 5, Jerrick Reed, could he be potentially another one of those draft and develop type of day 3 corner defensive backs for them? I certainly think so. And maybe McIntosh. Like, that's the thing. You already took Charbonnet in round 2, and now you're drafting yet another running back and McIntosh at the end of the draft? I don't know. But I did like some of the value they got in day 3. So I gave them a B- there. And I don't doubt that Witherspoon and Njigba are going to be year 1 contributors for the Seahawks. And like I said, I just really have trouble reconciling that Charbonnet pick. Like, how many times are you really going to run the ball? And if both Walker and Charbonnet are healthy, then how are you possibly going to utilize them enough to justify the slot with which you took both of those guys? If you were the defending Super Bowl champs, maybe I could get it because you say, hey, we're the defending Super Bowl champs, retain the roster that we have, we don't have a bunch of needs, so we just take best player available. I get that then, but I didn't really hear. I did like they got some good value. I thought they bounced back a little bit better in day 3. But as I look at the Seahawks draft, there were some solid gets here, but I'm wondering, how much better did they really get, right? And I wonder, long-term, if they're going to wish that they would have been able to take a quarterback in this draft. So I give them a final grade of a C for their effort this year.